Perfect. And Michael, when you're ready to start noodling there, we can let people in.
continue on our journey with the ringing of our bell with Jen in our bell tower.
Welcome to our beloved sanctuary, as well as our digital sanctuary on Zoom. Many thanks to Joel Neiditz and Mary Beth Noonan, who are operating the camera today, and to Com Tidal, who's our Zoom usher. Those of you who are here in person, we ask that you keep your masks on at all times while indoors. The worship leaders may take off their masks at the mic. As we begin our service today, we acknowledge that our church was built on the ancestral, unceded land of the Massachusetts people. We acknowledge the devastating legacy of settler colonialism and the continuing harm done to Indigenous groups in our community and beyond. May our commitment to justice, equity, and compassion call us to take meaningful, restorative action to honor and protect the land and all her people. We come together to recognize and celebrate the gift of life for ourselves and for all creatures with whom we share this planet, for the miracle of every breath, with wonder in our joys and compassion in our sorrows. We invite all of you to bring your perspectives, your beliefs and doubts, and all that is unique and wondrous about you to our service. In the spirit of love, all are welcome here. If you're new to Theater Parker Church or are visiting today, we'd love to stay in touch. You're invited to fill out a connection card, which will give you an opportunity to sign up for our weekly updates and help us welcome you. A link to the connection card will be in the chat, as well as our contact info. Those joining us here in the sanctuary are encouraged to fill in the contact card you'll find in your pews within the bright yellow pamphlet. We'd like to offer a moment for those joining us remotely to greet those of you in person. So Mary Beth and Joel, could you please put our sanctuary screen in gallery view so we can see our off-site congregation? And folks in the sanctuary, folks joining us on Zoom, we can see you in the sanctuary now, so give us a wave if you'd like. And folks in the sanctuary, the camera's actually behind you, just below the clock. Folks in the sanctuary, let's give a big wave and a hello to the folks joining us remotely.
Keep waving, keep going. They've got to zoom out. Here we go, keep waving.
Wonderful. You can have a seat, and AV folks, would you put the sanctuary back on speaker view, please? We hope that each of you will find some comfort to carry with you over the week and some challenge for your thoughts. As always, we wish for each of you health, well-being, and a sense of peace. Today, our pianist Yukiko Takagi, will be joining us remotely and offering us 3 pieces by the Italian classical composer Domenico Scarlatti. As Yukiko brings us into worship with Scarlatti's Sonata in C major, we bid you welcome.
Thank you, Yukiko. And we wish a speedy recovery. Yukiko's family has a mild case of COVID, well enough that she still felt up for playing, but we're glad she's able, through the miracles of technologies, to give us the gift of music today. So thank you and speedy recovery to your family. The month of April gives us a chance to explore the theme of awakening. And as the earth awakes from her winter slumber, we have a confluence of holidays that all happen around now. It's the month of Ramadan, a holy month of fasting and spiritual work in the Muslim calendar. Today is Palm Sunday in the Christian calendars, or at least the Western Christian calendars. And Passover begins this coming Friday night. So our service today will be honoring Passover a few days ahead of the holiday to give it its own space as we honor Easter next Sunday. Our opening words are from Rabbi Rachel Barenblatt, who has a blog known as The Velveteen Rabbi, which I love. She begins this reading called Ready with a quote directly from Exodus chapter 12, verse 34. So the people took their dough before it was leavened, their kneading bowls wrapped in their cloaks upon their shoulders. And these are her words. You'll need to travel light. Take what you can carry, a book, a poem, a battered tin cup, your child strapped to your chest, clutching your necklace in one hot, possessive fist. So the dough isn't ready. So your heart isn't ready. You haven't said goodbye to the places where you hid as a child, to the friends who aren't interested in the journey, to the graves you've tended. But if you wait until you feel fully ready, you may never take the leap at all. And infinity is calling you forth into the future's wide expanse. Learn to improvise flat cakes without yeast. Learn to read new alphabets. Wear God like a cloak and stride forth with confidence. You won't know where you're going, but you have the words of our sages, the songs of our mothers, the inspiration wrapped in your kneading bowl. Trust that what you carry will sustain you, and take the first step out the door. The story of the Exodus from Egypt has had resonance for so many different contexts and cultures over the millennia. Enslaved Africans who were forcibly converted to Christianity became familiar with the story and often adopted the imagery of the enslaved Israelites to speak to their own enslavement, to talk about God's deliverance as their own hoped-for deliverance from bondage. The spiritual Go Down Moses, or as our hymnal lists it by its first line, when Israel was in Egypt's land, takes lines straight out of the biblical story of Exodus and allows it to breathe in the context of the 19th century American South. The song was transcribed by Lewis Lockwood from the singing of some refugee slaves in 1861 and was published in December of that year in the National Anti-Slavery Standard. The original text to Go Down Moses was quite long, with over 20 stanzas. We won't sing all 20. But Go Down Moses was among many spirituals that had coded meanings. Harriet Tubman was said to have sung it to identify herself to enslaved people who want to flee north with her. So in honor of all of the times throughout history when those who have been oppressed have hung on to hope, and in honor of all of the liberation that's yet to come, let's join in singing this beloved spiritual, Go Down Moses, or When Israel Was in Egypt Land. We invite you to rise in body or in spirit to join us in singing.
When Israel was in Egypt's land, let my people go. Oppressed so hard they could not stand, let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh to let my people go. The Lord told Moses what to do. Let my people go. To lead the tribe of Israel through. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell old Pharaoh to let my people go. For you the cloud shall clear the way. Let my people go. A fire by night, a shade by day. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt's land. Tell old Pharaoh to let my people go. We need not always weep and moan. Let my people go and wear these slavery chains forlorn. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Tell old Pharaoh to let my people go.
Thank you. You may have a seat. Invite up, actually, that's not right. We have our chalice lighting next. We light our chalice each week with words of covenant, words of shared commitment. We read them first in English and then in Spanish translation in honor of our sister community in Plazuelas, El Salvador. So as we light our chalice here in the sanctuary, I'm going to spotlight Miriam Hernandez and Tom Keidel, who will be leading our reading for us. Invite you to join them in reading. The words in just a moment will be up on your screen and in the chat. So Tom and Miriam, when you're ready to unmute, take us away.
Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia y el servicio es nuestra oración. Esta es nuestra gran promesa, vivir juntos en paz, buscar la verdad con amor y ayudarnos los unos a los otros.
Thank you, Miriam and Tom. Invite up Rose to give us a story for all ages in honor of Passover.
Thank you. Give it a moment for the camera to do its thing. So this morning, as we honor the Jewish holiday of Passover and explore the biblical story of Exodus, I have a story for you all that I'm really excited to share. Later in our service, Reverend Joe will be inviting us to imagine ourselves in the narrative of Exodus. And the story I have for you this morning may help begin that imaginative process. It's called Nachshon, Who Was Afraid to Swim, by Deborah Bowden-Cohen. It's inspired by the Midrash, ancient rabbinic commentary on the Hebrew scriptures, about Nachshon, who was an Israelite enslaved in Egypt in the time of Moses, and who was among those who he led into freedom. So here is Nachshon, who was afraid to swim. In the days when Pharaoh ruled and the pyramids cast their shadows over Egypt, there lived an Israelite slave named Nachshon. Nachshon's parents, grandparents, and even his great-great-grandparents had lived as slaves. But Nachshon knew that long ago his family had been free, and he dreamed of freedom every night. From dawn to dusk, under the midday rays of the desert sun, Nachshon's father and brothers labored in the quarries, mixing straw and mud into bricks. Nachshon slipped past the taskmasters and smuggled in cool drinking water for them. Neither the Egyptian taskmasters nor Pharaoh himself scared the young boy. His family began to call him Brave Nachshon. When Pharaoh and his royal courtiers arrived in the city market, most slaves fled with fear. Not Nachshon. He trailed behind and spied on them. Whatever Nachshon learned, he reported to the Israelite elders. Soon everyone began calling him Brave Nachshon. Nachshon, though, had one fear. In the evening, when most slaves took a cool swim in the river Nile, Nachshon stood anxiously by the river's edge. He put his toes in the water and trembled. Some days, he imagined a giant crocodile grabbing his legs. Other days, he pictured himself slowly sinking into the river's bottom as though bricks were tied to his ankles. The other slaves began calling him Brave Nachshon, who was afraid to swim. When Nachshon grew old enough, the taskmasters demanded that he join his father and brothers in the quarries. Each day was long, dull, and dusty. The years passed slowly. As much as he dreamed of freedom, Nachshon feared he would always be a slave. Just when Nachshon began to give up hope, a stranger arrived, promising freedom for the Israelites. News of the visitor spread like a sandstorm. Nachshon ran to the riverbank to join the crowd, waiting to hear him speak. "His name is Moses," whispered a fellow slave. "He says he is an Israelite, but was raised in the royal palace until Pharaoh learned his true identity. Then he ran away. He says that God has sent him back to Egypt to demand our freedom." Nachshon's heart leaped at the sight. Moses' face glowed like the sun, and his eyes glistened like stars. He held a sapphire blue shepherd's staff, carved in the shape of a serpent. Though he spoke haltingly, his message was clear. "You must have faith that freedom is possible," Moses proclaimed, holding his staff towards the heavens. Real freedom means trusting in God. Real freedom means believing in yourself. That evening, their hope renewed, the Israelite slaves played in the cool waters of the Nile. "Brave Nachshon, come celebrate with us," called his friends. "Even today, with the possibility of freedom, are you still afraid to swim?" Moses saw Nachshon hesitate. He walked over, bent down, and whispered into the boy's ear, Real freedom means facing your fears and overcoming them. Nachshon looked at the river and repeated Moses' words to himself. It took all his courage just to dangle his legs into the current and splash some water on his body. The next morning, Moses approached Pharaoh and demanded freedom for the Israelites. Pharaoh's heart was hard. He not only rejected the plea, he made the Israelites work harder. But Moses told the people to not give up hope. God will send plagues over Egypt to soften the Pharaoh's heart, he predicted. When God sent locusts, Nachshon picked each and every insect off the few vegetables in his family's garden. The plagues did not frighten Nachshon. When God sent frogs, Nachshon caught a pair in a basket and let his nephews and nieces play with them. When God made the land pitch black with light only in Israelite homes, Nachshon ventured outside to check on his neighbors. Finally, Pharaoh gave in. He told Moses to take the Israelites and leave. Nachshon and his family packed quickly, without time even to let their bread rise. The Israelites headed to the Sea of Reeds and camped on its shores. Suddenly, in the distance, the Israelites heard a strange noise. First, it sounded like rain, then like a large swarm of hornets, then like a herd of gazelles. Nachshon ran to the top of a small cliff, looked in the direction of the noise. It was the sound of chariots. "The Egyptians are coming," he cried. The Israelites wept with fear. They were trapped between the advancing Egyptians and the Sea of Reeds. Nachshon knew what he must do, and Moses' words echoed in his mind. Real freedom means trusting in God. Real freedom means believing in yourself. Real freedom means facing your fears and overcoming them. Nachshon stepped slowly into the sea. The waters rose from his toes to his ankles, to his knees, to his waist, to his shoulders, to his chin, to his lips. Nachshon repeated silently, "Face your fears. Have faith." Just as the water was about to cover his head, a miracle occurred. Moses lifted his staff to the heavens, and a strong east wind pushed back the water, creating a dry path through the sea. All the Israelites joined Nachshon and walked with him to freedom. When they reached the opposite shore, the Israelites broke into song. But Nachshon simply waded into the sea to let the cool waters remind him that he was free. Free from slavery and free from his fears. Thank you. I'll invite Michael to sing our children's benediction for You Shall Go Out. And any children who would like to attend Children's Chapel, please join me and Abby over in the parish hall.
For you shall go out in joy, for you shall go out in joy, and come back in peace, and come back
Our centering hymn today is one of my favorites, Circle Around for Freedom, and it was written by Linda Hirschhorn. Linda Hirschhorn is a singer slash songwriter slash cantor, and she's the spiritual leader of Temple Beth Shalom in San Leandro, California. She travels around the country working with community choirs. And about Circle Around for Freedom, Cantor Hirschhorn wrote, I first wrote the song back in 1982 in support of the janitors' strike at UA movie theaters. I joined their picket line and circled round and round with them. The song went viral at demonstrations at the Livermore Labs against the buildup of nuclear weapons. Hundreds of us went to jail, and the song spread out from there. So I invite us to join together in singing this song, which has beautiful harmonies. I invite you to sing those, sing your own harmonies, or just soak in the song as we consider together what circling for freedom for the future of our planet means for each of us. I invite you to rise in body, rise in spirit as we sing.
Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us in prison, circle for release, circle for the planet, circle for each cell, for the children of our children, keep the circle whole. Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us in prison, circle for release, circle for the planet, circle for each soul, for the children of our children, keep the circle whole.
One more time.
Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us in prison, circle for release, circle for the planet, circle for each soul, for the children of our children, keep the circle whole.
You may be seated. I invite you to join me in a time of meditation or prayer, first in words, then in about a minute of silence, then in melody. Our prayer today is from Reverend Lynn Cox. Spirit of life and love, known by many names and yet fully known by none. We give thanks for this time and this place of renewal. We give thanks for the ability to begin again after the disaster, after the tragedy, after the loss, after meeting the challenge set before us. Grant us the courage to continue on the journey, the courage to speak up for the well-being of others and ourselves and the planet. May we forgive each other when our courage falls short, and may we try again. Grant us hearts to love boldly, to embody our faith and our values in living words and deeds, May our hearts open to embrace humility, grace, and reconciliation. Grant us the ability to learn and grow, to let the spirit of love and truth work its transformation upon us and within us. Grant us the spirit of hospitality, the willingness to sustain a fit dwelling place for the holy that resides in all beings. Grant us a sense of being at peace in the world, even as we are in motion. Let us cultivate together the strength to welcome every kind of gift and all manner of ways to be on the journey together. To this, we add now the silent prayers of our hearts.
Generosity is a spiritual practice in our Unitarian Universalist congregations. We give to remind ourselves of how many gifts we have to offer. We give to remember that we are part of something bigger than ourselves. We give because we believe in music and sacred space. We give with the faith that together we have enough. Links to donate will be in the chat, or you can take a meditative moment writing out a check and sending it to the church after the service. Ushers will be coming around in the sanctuary to collect an offering from those in the pews who wish to donate something more tangible. As Yukiko shares Scarlatti's sonata in F minor with us, an offering to sustain this congregation of memory and hope will be gratefully received. Thank you.
Thank you, Yukiko. And thank you, friends, for your generosity.
This is a reading called The Desert Spring by Victoria Stafford. They had no idea where they were going when they left that night, in the dark, without lights, without shoes, without bread. Their children smothered against them so they would make no noise. They had no idea what they were getting into, following this Moses, this wild-eyed one who claimed visions and made promises, but who, after all, could guarantee them nothing except death if they were caught. They had no idea, these slaves, what it could mean, this promise of land, their own country, and life abundant. Of freedom, they knew nothing except what they could taste by living in its opposite, slavery. And that taste became a hunger, and that hunger became insatiable till they were ravenous for freedom. And they went out then. But no one knows to this day whether they were led by Moses or by the outstretched arm and mighty hand of something else, of something eternal, as they would afterwards and always claim, or whether their own human, hungry will made them flee that night away from Pharaoh. They went into the wilderness. There they wandered 40 years, which in those days was a lifetime. 40 was a good old age, so many of them died before getting anywhere. And many were born in the desert and grew to adulthood, knowing nothing but the journey, not slavery, not freedom, just the going. They whined and complained and muttered, and some mutinied, for they were a stiff-necked and rebellious people. You can read it for yourself. Ungrateful people, even when manna rained down from heaven and quails were sent to feed them. Unhappy people, longing, out loud even, for the familiar security of Egypt of all places, where at least they knew what to expect, as awful as it was. Impatient people, making cheap little idols and gods of metal to bargain in secret when the traveling got hard or merely dull, and the days and years became monotonous. In the springtime, we remember the promised land is not a destination, it's a way of going. The land beyond the Jordan, that country of freedom and dignity and laughter, you carry it inside you all the while. It is planted in your mind and heart already, before you ever start out, before it even occurs to you that in order to leave that life in Egypt, the intolerable bondage of that life, what you need to do is rise up and travel forward.
Thank you, Ellie. There is a Jewish teaching that at Passover, you should envision yourself as part of the Exodus story. That in every generation, a person is obligated to see themselves as though they had personally gone forth from Egypt. It's from a biblical verse, Exodus chapter 13, verse 8. You shall tell your child on that day, we are commemorating this holiday because of what God did for me when I left Egypt. My parents took that advice to heart and spoke that way. I remember when I was about 4 years old, sitting at the table as my parents bustled around the kitchen preparing for Passover. I was coloring my special Passover coloring book, which I still have, and I flipped to this crowd scene of a whole bunch of Israelites about to cross the Sea of Reeds. You'll get to see it in a second. So if you were there, I said to my parents, are you in this picture? What do you think? Replied my mom. Well, I said, pausing to think. I looked down at the coloring page. Oh, there it is. Very good. It looked something like this. It looked exactly like this. I looked up at my dad, who had a very 1980s mustache. I don't see any men in this picture with just mustaches. They all have mustaches and beards. Daddy, did you have a beard back then? Maybe, he responded. Okay, so this man with a beard is next to a woman holding a baby. Was that you, Mommy, then? Was I there too? Maybe, she responded. I have this memory of coloring in those two figures in the baby, but apparently I didn't. I have this memory of focusing real hard on them, at least. Now, 30-something years later, when I think about the Israelites crossing the sea, I picture that particular crowd scene. I picture myself. The Exodus story in and of itself is compelling. I watched a lot of repetitions of the Ten Commandments and the Prince of Egypt over and over the years. It's familiar to so many of us. Some years at my Passover Seders, the ritual meals that we have on the first and sometimes second night, I often hurry us through the retelling of the Exodus story, eager to get to the part of the evening where my guests and I can eat. But when I place myself inside of that story, I feel connected in an incredible way to an ancestral story. I feel connected to ancestors who have told and retold this story for generations. I feel connected to this voice from the past that flows through the lives of everyone, as Roberta Flack puts it in her song, The River. But especially this year, the story feels immediate and relevant. I keep thinking of a sermon that I heard Matt Meyer give when he asked us at Sanctuary Boston to picture the Israelites standing at the shores of the sea, about to cross its divided waters. Matt says that he sometimes tries to picture who he is in this story and invited us to do the same. We might hope to be like Moses, the leader, or Miriam, the prophet, who led the Israelites in song to celebrate their freedom. But we realize that some days we might be more like the Israelites, fearful of leaving the pain that is known to step into the unknown. Or we may be like Pharaoh, playing our part in a system designed to oppress. I admit, not without shame, that I have been overwhelmed by the barrage of terrible in the news. I called Alabama's Governor Kay Ivey this weekend, leaving a voicemail asking her to veto legislation that just passed the state legislature in Alabama, the most extreme slate of bills attacking trans youth that we've faced in the history of this fight. Unfortunately, she did sign that bill. I found, though, when I hung up the phone, it took like 30 seconds, but when I hung up the phone, I realized it was the first call to a politician's office that I'd made in a long time. I don't know what to do about the situation in Ukraine, besides donate to organizations who are trying to provide strong humanitarian response. I'm scared for our planet, for the next generations, for us. Most days, I avoid the fear by keeping my head down and going about my daily life as best as I can. But Passover is coming, and it invites us to take a longer view, maybe even a cosmic view. Who would I be in the story of slavery and liberation? Probably just who I am now. But who do I want to be? I can conjure the spirit of Miriam using music to fuel a movement. I can be like the Hebrew midwives in the story who defied Pharaoh's orders to kill the children. Or like Pharaoh's own daughter who saved Moses, helping those within my reach, guided more by what I know to be right than by what I think is easy or safe. And what's more, Jewish traditions teach that the reason that we retell the Passover story as if we ourselves had gone forth from Egypt is to foster empathy and solidarity. You've heard me say this before, that over and over the Torah teaches, you shall not oppress the widow, the orphan, or the stranger in your midst, for you know the heart of the stranger, having yourselves been strangers in the land of Egypt. We keep connected to our stories so that we never lose our understanding of how it is to be a stranger, to be on the margins, to be oppressed. We are called to act because of our stories. I have been delving back into my family's genealogy recently. Now, I knew that my family came to America around 1900 from a handful of Jewish villages in Eastern Europe. Nation states and borders have shifted a lot over that time, so I went to Google Maps to see where those towns are today. 2 of my ancestors came from towns that are now in Belarus. The rest of them came from Ukraine. The war in Ukraine has shaken and unsettled many of us whose Jewish ancestors fled what's now Ukraine due to anti-Semitic violence at the turn of the 20th century, or those who were there during World War II. It has shaken loose my desire to learn the stories of those ancestors. Now, look, I was a Jewish studies major in college, so I learned a lot about the Jewish immigrant experience at the turn of the century in particular. And I've heard a lot of family stories about these first-generation Americans establishing themselves in New York City and in Philadelphia. At least that's my own family story. So the story I heard in my head is one of putting down roots in a new place, of getting by in poverty, and assimilating into American culture so the next generation might have it easier than the ones who came over. But I've reached the point in graphing my family tree that I'm seeing the people who were born in the old country, who raised a family there, and then made the choice to flee to America. At Passover especially, this really has me wondering, what was it like to make that choice? My thoughts turn again to this poem by Marge Piercy. It's entitled Magid, which is the Hebrew word for telling. It's a part of the ritual meal that retells the story of the Exodus. This poem has always given me chills and also is a source of strength. Here in part is Marge Piercy's poem. The courage to let go of the door, the handle. The courage to leave the place whose language you learned as early as your own, whose customs, however dangerous or demeaning, bind you like a halter that you have learned to pull inside, to move your load. The land fertile with the blood spilled on it, the roads mapped and annotated for survival. The courage to walk out of the pain that is known into the pain that cannot be imagined. Mapless, walking into the wilderness, going barefoot with a canteen into the desert. My people, she says, are all born of wanderers, with shoes under our pillows. At Passover, we honor those people who changed, those who chose the desert over bondage, who walked into the strange and become strangers, and gave birth to children who could look down on them, standing on their shoulders for having been slaves. We honor those who let go of everything but freedom, who ran, who revolted, who fought, who became other by saving themselves. The courage to walk out of the pain that is known into the pain that cannot be imagined, letting go of everything but freedom. I've only recently thought to ask my family if we have any of the stories still that might have been passed down to us about what it was like for that generation who left the persecution of Eastern Europe, who were willing to risk the journey into the unknown. And I was surprised to hear this story. Brief content warning, the story contains an episode of gun violence, but everyone comes out okay. The year is 1905, and Mayor Gorin lives in a shtetl, a little Jewish village called Zolotonoshka, in what's now Ukraine. In part of a wave of rising anti-Semitism, there is a pogrom in their town. Cossack soldiers are attacking Jewish homes. As they come to Meyer's home, the whole family hides under the bed, including his pregnant wife, Rivka, and his 3-year-old daughter, Anne, and Dora, age 2. That 3-year-old was my great-grandmother, Anne, who I got to know as I grew up. She lived to be 100. But they are all hiding under the bed as Cossack soldiers violently ransack their home. My great-great-grandfather, Mayer, sticks his head out from under the bed to see what's happening. And here's the violence. A soldier shoots Mayer in the head and leaves him for dead. He is 27 years old. The soldiers leave and Rivka crawls over to her husband, and miraculously, the bullet only grazed him, leaving a scalp wound that bleeds profusely, but from which he would recover. He will always have a bald patch where that bullet hit him. The story goes that Mayer's mother, Pesha Golda, disguised herself as a Gentile and somehow led her family through the ongoing pogrom to a safe spot. What is going through her mind? Is she frightened, determined, clear-headed, and just ready to do what must be done? This was the turning point. This is one of those moments in my family story where the pain that is known, the oppression and the violence and the fear, is worse than the unknown. Mayer's brother lives in America, and the whole family decides to flee across the water to try and join him there. They travel for weeks or months to get from Ukraine to England, where they take a boat bound for New York. They travel in steerage. Meyer, Rivka, who is pregnant and seasick, and my great-grandmother Anne and her sister Dora. What is that journey like? Do they second-guess themselves? Do they yearn for the familiar confines of their own old lives? Are they relieved, hopeful, exhausted? However they did it, however they felt, I am alive because of them. I am free because they chose the ocean over bondage. When I hear these stories, when I place myself inside them, I feel connected to something that has gone before, part of a long, unbroken line of ordinary, extraordinary humans doing the best they can. their courage to journey into the unknown, to cross the sea, to place their hope in the possibility of something better, helps keep me from sinking, and it gives me fuel for the journey. Connecting myself to their stories reminds me how it feels to be a stranger on the margins, to be oppressed. And their stories call me to act. We all have stories of courage, stories of journeying into the unknown, whether they're our ancestors or maybe also our own. For some of us, the ancestral stories speak of leaving out of necessity, of fleeing from persecution or famine or violence, or of forced migration or resettlement, or of enslavement. Leaving is the only option. These stories call us to the courage it takes to survive, to keep going. For some of us, the ancestral story is one of hoping for opportunity or adventure or change. These stories call us to the courage it takes to be curious, to believe in possibilities, to live boldly and explore. Some of us could share stories of leaving painful relationships, of switching careers to pursue a long-held dream, of coming out or of transitioning gender to live authentically as ourselves. These stories call us to the courage it takes to live wholeheartedly. What does courage call you to do? Who does courage call you to be? The Sufi poet Hafiz wrote, "Fear is the cheapest room in the house. I would like to see you living in better conditions." Beloveds, may you be renewed in courage, knowing you have ancestors all behind you. Their journeys, their strength flows through you. We are all always standing at the shores of the sea, journeying toward a promised land, the world as it could be. The promised land is not a destination, it is a way of going. The land beyond the Jordan, that country of freedom and dignity and laughter. We carry it inside us all the time. It is planted in our mind and our heart already before we ever start out, before it ever even occurs to us that in order to leave life in Egypt, the intolerable bondage of that life, all we need to do is rise up and move forward. May we go together. Amen. In that spirit, I invite you to join in our closing hymn, "Come and Go With Me to That Land." This hymn was first recorded in 1930 as a traditional gospel blues song by the musician known as Blind Willie Johnson, though it may date back even earlier to the time of enslavement. Its message of joining together on the journey toward a better future, though, is timeless. So I invite you to rise in body, rise in spirit as we sing, "Come and Go With Me."
Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. there'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm bound. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land where I'm bound.
I invite you to be seated for our closing words, following which we'll have a postlude, time for announcements, and some social time. Our closing words is "Blessed is the Path" by Eric Williams. Blessed is the path on which you travel. Blessed is the body that carries you upon it. Blessed is your heart that has heard the call. Blessed is your mind that discerns the way. Blessed is the gift that you will receive by going. Truly blessed is the gift that you will become on the journey. May you go forth in peace. So may it be. Thank you, Yukiko. a few brief announcements to invite you to continue to take part in the life of Theodore Parker Church beyond just Sunday mornings. Next Sunday is Easter Sunday, so feel free to come in your Easter bonnet and florals, or just as you are. If it's a beautiful day out, we might hang out outside afterwards to chat and enjoy. There may be an Easter egg hunt, we'll see, but invite you to come and enjoy each other's company as we honor this springtime holiday. We will be having a series of conversations that we want to have as many voices at as possible. Rose and I will be co-hosting candlelight conversations about church. And this is kind of building off the spirit of candlelight dinners, but this is really a chance to live in kind of the realm of possibility of exploring what it is that we are excited about and curious about with church. I'm trying to pull up the dates. The first one will be on Wednesday, April 27th in the evening. You'll get all of this by newsletter. You should definitely read the newsletter. There will be one on Sunday, May 1st after church, and so you'll be able to go get lunch and come to it. And we'll have one more that will also be on Zoom so that folks are able to join. We really hope we'll be inviting folks from all the different teams and committees to join so that we get that set of voices in here, but really we want everyone, even if it's your first time here today, to be able to join and reflect with us. Finally, I want to give 2 shout-outs, one of which to our amazing stewardship team, which I just heard today from Gretchen. We got just today our very maybe not final pledge, but the pledge that got us to our goal of 84 pledging units, which is amazing. Y'all are so incredibly generous. And we have exceeded, I believe, our total financial goal for what we hope to have brought in. So this is amazing. It was ambitious, and y'all are just incredible with how you care about this congregation and its future. So thank you. And finally, if you are interested in helping make Sunday worship happen, there are a few opportunities to do so. You'll see in this past week's newsletter some information about how to participate in the music and worship team. You'll be getting a survey from me shortly about if you want to be a chalice lighting reader, or if you want to do a reading in or art or music during a service. As well as if you are interested in being an usher and greeter and helping welcome people into this space. Please let us know if that is something that would excite you to help co-create worship together. So with that, I bless you on your way. For those of you celebrating Passover, Chag Sameach, I wish you a happy and liberating Passover. To those of you observing Holy Week, may that be meaningful for you, and we will look forward to seeing you on Easter Sunday. Those of you online, I'm going to set up breakout rooms for you to have 20 minutes of conversation. Those in person, feel free to hang out here or outside and chat with one another. Go in peace.